Welcome to Pop Monster, a podcast to feed all of your pop culture cravings. My name is Sarah, a self-confessed superfan. This show will cover everything from reality TV chaos, nostalgic deep dives, and the latest in music, TV, movies, and books. So let's get into it. The Japanese art of kintsugi teaches us that there is beauty in the broken. We can mend some fractured pottery with gold lacquer and create something even more incredible. And I don't want to pat myself on the back too much, but recently I was struck down in the prime of my life with the flu. Had a minor mental breakdown and decided that the remedy would be to rewatch season 4 of American Idol from 2005. From my sickness, I grew a new appreciation for the reality arts of the 2000s. A little background on me, I love myself some mindless reality TV. It's soothing, it numbs the brain, and in the year of our Lord 2026, I decided to watch the current season of American Idol because I had the harebrained idea to dip back into it last year and I love that season. But this year, it's a mess. Disney, we know you have money, so stop cutting budgets. I don't even know how to say this, but my favorite part of any season of American Idol is the Hollywood round. So in the current season, which is season 24, they have stripped this week back to nothing. It is bare bones. It was 2 episodes in Nashville. It's not even in Hollywood anymore. Also, all 4 of the audition episodes were held in Nashville too. Yeah, this isn't Nashville Idol. These bums need to do a little bit of travel. Anyway, they got rid of everything that makes Hollywood great on Idol. There wasn't even group performances. I just love when they trap them in the room like Jigsaw. Call me a terrible person, but I like them sleep-deprived and having a breakdown in the Holiday Inn Resort and Conference Center while trying to string together the lyrics to that fucking Teddy Swims song. I have had it up to here with modern-day Idol and all of their Disney bullshit. Although, I would still love to go to the Aulani Resort in Hawaii. Don't even get me started on the Songs of Faith week. Sure, everyone has the right to practice their religion, but can we please keep at least our singing competitions secular? I don't need to hear people singing hymns, or a lot of the times they end up singing Coldplay, which is, in my opinion, even worse. And I'll admit, I'm a total hypocrite because last season, my absolute favourite contestant was Jamal, who is primarily a gospel artist. But Jamal is such a star that I can put that aside. Love that man. So, recently watching season 24 and my viral infection prompted me to revisit some older seasons of American Idol to find out if I'm just going crazy with nostalgia or if the show was far superior 20 years ago. And I have a bit of history with this show. I remember that back in the day in the UK, they used to air it on ITV2, and it was really a bonding experience for me and my mum. To this day, I'm still a super fan of Kelly Clarkson and love watching her karaoke videos. But my journey with Idol began in 2006 with season 5. I would say that I didn't get fully addicted until season 6. That's when I was spending my time downloading each contestant's studio recordings through nefarious illegal means. At this time, I was also all in on the British singing shows like Pop Idol and The X Factor, and as a society, we had not yet been introduced to The Voice. So, in case you missed it, season 5 was the season where I was introduced to a contestant who still terrifies me to this day, a silver-haired crooner called Taylor Hicks. You know, the less I say about him, the better. Some other contestants that year include Catherine McPhee, who probably deserved to win, but I wasn't rooting for her. She really bothered me on Idol and on that TV show Smash. I'm sure a lot of my hate back then was internalized misogyny, but I'll be honest, she annoys me to this day with her relationship with that total creep David Foster. I'm just glad that Yolanda Hadid is free of that demon. My obsession that season was with one man, Chris Daughtry, and I still listen to music from his band. I don't know if I have yet recovered from the rage blackout I had when he got eliminated from the show. That man was my winner. I also had a huge crush on Ace, and I'll confess that I'm a pervert. When I watch these shows, I need to have a hot man to root for. So when I was Googling Ace, I saw that he's married to season 3 American Idol runner-up Diana DeGarmo. And I don't know if they have any children, but I need their progeny to step it up and enter this competition. They can be the super American Idol Nepo final boss. I don't even care if they can sing or not. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting distracted, but I consistently watched this show from season 5 all the way up to season 11. I had to call it a day after season 11 because I had been burned too much by this show, and there'd just been too many white guy with guitar winners, and I really wanted the runner-up to win that season. Maybe eventually I will watch those 10 seasons I missed from season 12 to 22, but I'd have to say for me, my number one favourite season of American Idol ever would be season 8, and Adam Lambert remains my favourite ever contestant. I need to go see him perform with Queen, but him, Kelly, and Jennifer Hudson are my top 3 Holy Trinity talents discovered on this show. Now, before I start with my review of season 4, I would like to say a thank you to the angels on this earth who are uploading full seasons of American Idol on YouTube. If I had to sing a song of faith, I would sing it for Old Idol USA and James Factor on YouTube. Without you, I am nothing. I will say, if you're also considering doing a rewatch, it is an endeavour. Don't ask me how I made the time to watch over 42 episodes of American Idol from 2005. Don't ask me if I'm doing well. Clearly not. But I felt pure, unadulterated bliss when I was watching this. So the reason that I started with season 4, which is a season that current judge Carrie Underwood won, and that's not a spoiler, people, it's been 21 years. The reason I started with this one is because on YouTube, the earliest season I could find was season 3, and I tried to start there, but the low video quality was just too much for me to overcome. And this is not a dig at those YouTubers who are uploading them. These seasons weren't in HD. They didn't start that until season 5. So in the opening of the episode I tried to watch of season 3, we see Ryan standing in a crowd of people, and I genuinely thought he was in a potato field. I thought the man was surrounded by potatoes. I have ancestors who died in the potato famine. I wasn't ready for that visual. So that's what prompted me to start with season 4. Alright, let me set the scene and take you back to this time. Now, it is hard to explain exactly how big this show was at the time if you weren't there to experience it. But this show aired globally, and in the United States, this was the number 1 show on television. In the cultural landscape, their other competition that year was CSI, Grey's Anatomy, and Desperate Housewives. Ugh, please take me back. These were our glory days. This show really put Fox on the map. Now, if you're not aware, Fox is a mess today. I don't want to hear about those maniacs on Fox News, and I don't actually know what they have going on besides their animated comedy lineup. But back in the day, they did something right, and it was Idol. Actually, to be fair, back in the day, they did a few things right. Beverly Hills 90210, The OC, Dark Angel starring Jessica Alba, and, I'm still not ready to speak about Glee. Anyway, at this point in time, Idol could not have been bigger. It made household names for the first 3 winners, Kelly Clarkson, Ruben Studdard, and Fantasia Barrino. This show could print its own money. It was the most expensive series on television for advertisers. They could sell a 30-second ad slot for over $700,000. Oh, sidebar, but I went down a rabbit hole on YouTube watching old commercials for all the merchandise they were producing. And I had to physically restrain myself from purchasing any of this today on eBay. They had their own trading cards, video camera toys for kids, and American Idol Barbies. It was really tough not buying one of those dolls. But I have this fear of becoming one of those doll women. I already have my Aaliyah Barbie and Regina George Bratz doll, and at what number of dolls does it become too much? Anyway, this show was making bank. If you just watch a minute of any of these old episodes, you are smacked in the face with product placement. This show reminds me of one of my favourite movies, Josie and the Pussycats, which has some excellent social commentary on product placement and advertising. But watching this show, we were getting hammered by Ford and Singular Wireless and Coca Cola with the branded backstage Coca Cola Red Room. It was working on me. When I was watching, I had to open one of those new Coca Cola Zero cherry floats, and my review is that it was just okay. All right, enough rambling from me. Let's unpack season 4. And naturally, I need to begin with the true stars of the show, the judges. So from season 1 all the way to season 8, we had the core trio together of Randy, Paula, and Simon. They're the Holy Trinity to me. In 2026, if someone asks you who the American Idol judges are, I don't want to hear anything about the flops currently doing it on ABC. I want to hear Simon, Paula, Randy. You can tell that there is an actual, real, genuine relationship formed between these 3. They're a family. We see them fight, we see them make up. They are bonded, and I'd actually love to see a rundown on how much time they actually spent in the audition room together. Because on Idol today, there is no way that Lionel Richie is fucking with those 2 jabrones he sat next to outside of the show. And I feel like they aren't together for more than 2 hours across all of the auditions. And I feel like I'm being generous with that estimate. My controversial take on judges on American Idol is that the best judges are the ones who can't sing. Real singers make everything about themselves and their ego and their whole singing process, which is exactly what we see on The Voice. And no offense to Paula or one of my favorite Idol judges, J-Lo, because I love watching them on the panel and they have both had very successful music careers, but I don't know if I'd consider them a vocalist. They're more of a showman or a performer. Honestly, what I would give for a modern day season with Randy, Paula and Simon, they are part of the magic that made American Idol iconic. When I'm watching the panel today with Carrie Underwood, okay, I need to talk about her for a second. In the context of her today, not as a contestant on season 4, but I was always such a Carrie stan. Name a better karaoke song than Before He Cheats. Name a better driving song than Jesus Take the Wheel. I'll wait, there isn't a better one. But this dummy really showed her ass when she decided to perform and sounded like shit at the Trump inauguration. To me, she has now become Karen Underwood. Even taking her personal politics out of it, this was just a poor business decision. We know that both MAGA and country radio fans don't care about women. The other day, I was having a really bad mental day, so I decided to go for a walk outside and downloaded what I thought would be the most mind-numbing playlist from Apple Music. And it was a country playlist called Happy Hour Country. And I'm saying this as someone who listens to music performed by women 95% of the time. I was really taken aback by how few women were featured on this playlist. I had to dig deeper and calculated that out of the 145 songs included on the playlist, 18 of them featured a woman. And a lot of those were women duetting with a man or as part of a mixed male-female band like Little Big Town. I don't know why this was so shocking to me because I remember reading a statistic that only 8% of country music radio airtime is given to music by women. So Carrie really alienated a lot of her fan base who have made her successful with that move. The liberal girls and gays aren't streaming your shit anymore. Good luck to you, Karen. I think she doesn't care and is doing just fine regardless. I heard that she makes bank from her NFL Sunday Night Football fame. Also, did we ever get to the bottom of what happened when Carrie had that accident where she tripped over her dogs and had to stay locked inside her house for a year like Phantom of the Opera? Because I remember there were all these reports that she was completely disfigured and had to have her whole face reconstructed. Then when we saw her, she didn't look that different apart from a small scar. Like, what happened there? I mean, I think she looks more different now than she did after that accident because of all the plastic surgery she's had since. I'm being mean right now. I need to move on. So let's forget her and start with Randy Jackson. Now, throughout the season, I don't know how much his constructive feedback to contestants is adding to the show. But thanks to him, I learned what being pitchy means, and it remains the only bit of criticism that he can give out. Regardless, I feel a real sense of comfort seeing Randy on that panel. It's like watching my uncle. He gives us a safe place to land, and he knows who he is. He knows his niche, as Paula would say, or niche, as the rest of the world would. And he adopts all of the male contestants into his dog pound. I was doing some reading up on Randy, and we need to give him more credit for his expertise. I only ever hear about how he was a bassist for Journey, but this man has worked in all aspects of the industry, as a musician, a producer, and working as a record label executive. So, Randy knows his stuff, and I also learned that season 4 is the first season he filmed after having his gastric bypass. And I watch all of the obesity shows on TLC. I've seen some harrowing surgeries on My 600 Pound Life, 1,000 Pound Sisters, 1,000 Pound Friends. The list goes on, and that is not a fun recovery. So kudos to you, Randy, because he really bounced right back into filming this show pretty soon after his surgery. Now we get to Paula. Oh, Paula. I am that woman's biggest apologist, but she was coming into the season contending with a lot of drama. First was some legal issues when she did a hit and run after clipping another car. And I love you, Paula, but who let this woman have a license? Then during the season, a former contestant called Corey Clark alleged that he had an affair with Paula, and this was spread everywhere. It was featured in an hour-long ABC primetime special, as well as a book. And I did some digging on this, and the story is quite convoluted because Corey was disqualified from the show due to some pending criminal charges. But he claimed that it was actually due to following Paula's advice to get his own lawyer before signing the Idol contract. His smoking gun was a voicemail from someone who sounded quite a bit like Paula, but, this didn't slow her down. She did a skit on SNL mocking the scandal and throughout the season was super horny for several of the male contestants. But, oh, God help me, I love this woman. She is such a wild card. I recently started binging a lot of the one-season reality shows that are on Hayu, which is a reality streaming service we have in the UK. And there is a little show on there from 2007 called Hey Paula. And this woman, man, she is torturing her staff. She is having breakdowns after being fired from the Bratz movie. And in one of the most insane scenes I've ever seen in the history of reality television, she is just off her face on God knows what and acting wild while in a lab sampling her new fragrance. If you have not seen the show, I implore you to get to work. It is a much easier watch than Idol. It is just 7 20-minute episodes. You can just blast through that in an evening. Oh, I could just talk about Paula Abdul all day. One of my favourite stories about her is her claiming that she was seriously injured in a plane crash in 19... Now, there are no records of this happening anywhere with the National Transportation Safety Board, and they're the people who log all of these incidents. She has alleged there were 7 other people on the plane with her, but none of them have spoken out to corroborate. This, and she says she made them sign NDAs. Yeah, you can't make this stuff up. So watching the season back, I actually really appreciated the positivity that Paula brought to the show. She is needed there as a counterbalance to the darkness of Simon Cowell. And she's actually very constructive for the nice judge. The judges today will not critique anything. If you plopped Paula into the current panel, she might actually be the mean judge. And honestly, she'd look a lot more sober if you put her next to Luke Bryan. Finally, we have Simon, and let's be honest, this guy is a prick and definitely creepy towards the female contestants at times. Between him and Paula, these contestants were just getting harassed left, right and centre. But I did find myself agreeing with him a lot. Many of those performances do belong in a cruise ship cabaret. Now, over the years, I have watched a lot of this man, between Idol and the X Factor, and one thing that really frustrates me with him are his biases. Once this man sees a contestant who he can market to make him some cash, he just turns into a slot machine. You just see these dollar signs in his eyes, and I don't trust that he's always giving honest feedback to his favourites. With this season, I feel like the winner was predetermined. As soon as we see Carrie's audition, Simon is saying that they've been waiting for a country singer to do well in this competition. It was her time. Hosting the show, we have, of course, Ryan Seacrest. And I'll be honest, I have never been a fan of him, but we need him, and it was nice seeing him in 2005. Because in 2026, God, I really hope that he's not ill, but he is looking like a jack-o'-lantern on an emaciated body. I really forgot that he had more of a Joel McHale-style snarky persona in these earlier seasons. Because in the newer seasons, he's just getting wheeled in and throws out a few scripted lines each episode. Now, I've never heard this man on the radio or taken the time to see what he does outside of the Idolverse. So maybe it's just the way they scripted him back in those days, but he is so brutal about the contestants on the voiceovers. The things he's saying are wild. Okay, so we're talking season 4, and there have been a few format changes this season. The first is the age limit being raised to 28, and this new rule is responsible for a lot of the talent this season that would have otherwise been missed, like Constantine, Bo Bice, and Nadia Turner. They also mixed up the rules for this semi-final round so that there will be an equal number of male and female finalists in the top 12, which, to be honest, made very little difference because the audience wants a lot of the women out of the competition real quick. Okay, let's get into the auditions, and this is the first season where guest judges were invited to participate during this process. And I loved having them here. It helps to spice things up and keeps it fresh. And it's so great to see all of these different US cities as locations. It was like watching Man vs. Food, and Ryan was giving us a little flavour of each place. Oh God, I'm going to end up like one of those blob people in the chairs at the end of WALL-E, and all I'll need is a VR headset, and that will be enough for me to travel the world because I enjoyed my Idol minification. So the guest judges are Mark McGrath of Sugar Ray, who did not come across well, and has one standout moment where he was perving on a 17-year-old and called her hot. We've also got Gene Simmons, Kenny Loggins, and Brandy, and my favourite of all of the guest judges was LL Cool J. That man was a class act. He gave very honest, constructive feedback, but was actually compassionate towards the contestants. I loved him. And I already came in with some bias because I am a big fan of LL. Both of his music and his contributions to cinema with Deep Blue Sea and Last Holiday starring Queen Latifah. Watching these auditions, there is so much that I didn't remember about the format and how it differs so greatly from current day Idol. points, it felt like I was watching a parody, and in every city we are shown no more than 2 actual good singers. They are just spamming us with terrible performances, and I'll be honest, I was entertained. My favourite trope on the show is when they play that dumpy circus music when someone they consider to be a freak walks in, and then that person can actually sing. A Susan Boyle moment, if you will. We got to see this a couple times this season. There was Brianna Davis, a blue-haired goth girl, and I'll always root for a goth girl, who absolutely crushed Phantom of the Opera. The fact that she could sing like that after taking opera lessons for only 1 year. I would have loved to hear her sing something by Evanescence. I tried to look her up online, but couldn't find anything, so I really hope that she's still singing because I thought she was incredible. Another singer who fit in this mold was Scott Saville, who makes it pretty far in this competition, so I'll talk more about him later, but the way the judges were acting about his appearance, it was like the Elephant Man had walked into the room. It was pretty extreme. He kind of reminded me of that Michael Jackson character from The Simpsons, who Homer meets when he goes into the mental institution. Once the stylists get their hands on him, though, they just keep putting sunglasses on him and making him look like Fat Joe. Now, I have handpicked some of my most memorable auditions to discuss, but it was honestly so hard to narrow them down. I find the whole string of episodes from the auditions to the end of Hollywood to be so easy to binge. I went through those 10 episodes in 2 days. So first up, we had our introduction to a sleazy demon called Constantine Maroulis. I find him both disturbing and enchanting. Now, when we meet Constantine, we learn that he's part of a hard metal band, and when he gets through to Hollywood, he has to quit the band. And this is some of the toughest scripted scenes I've ever had to witness. They even bring Seacrest in, and I have seen better acting in porn. Alright, so going into the season, I was going in pretty blind. The only things I'd seen were Carrie's performance of Alone, and I must have in the background once seen the addition of one man named Leroy Wells. Oh, Leroy. This may have been my favourite audition. If I could have an ounce of this man's energy and positivity, I would be living a more fulfilled life. I couldn't make out a single word he was saying, but this man just lights up a room and can really land a backflip. That's not easy. On days when I wake up and look outside and the weather is miserable, I just find that clip of Leroy on YouTube and it makes me get my shit together. Now, naturally, of course, he couldn't sing a note, but they should have kept him there the whole season for morale. Let him do some co-hosting with Ryan. In terms of the worst audition we heard, I'd have to say Mary Roach, an 18-year-old phenomenon who gives us one of the most haunting performances of Carole King's I Felt the Earth Move. Now, I was initially a little bit worried for Mary's sanity, but from what I've read afterwards, it seems like it might have been a comedy bit, and honestly, it's truly one of the most horrendous things I've ever heard. But on Instagram today, Mary is still embracing her experience. This woman even has her own hashtag, Keep Calm and Roach On. Those are words to live by. Put that on my tombstone. Actually, sidebar, I don't want to be buried. I want to be cremated and then have my ashes scattered at my local Costco. Okay, on that dark note, let's talk about Regina Brooks. She is a decent singer, but her story on this show is pretty bleak. And nobody this season was working harder than this woman. She tells us that without music, she will die. And she pawns her wedding ring, which she chooses to pawn over her karaoke machine. Fair enough. To make it to the first edition. And I don't blame her for getting rid of this ring because I didn't care for her husband. This man was just not supporting her idol dreams. And this poor woman doesn't make it past the Hollywood stage, but I have to admire her dedication. She loses 40 pounds between the audition round and Hollywood. This is insane, and she couldn't have had more than 3 months to do this. Also this season, there were so many family auditions and a crazy amount of twins. So much screen time was given in the early stages to these Muffaletta twins. I'm pretty sure that's a sandwich, but I don't care enough about them to fact check their name. Although I do vaguely remember twins being a really big thing in reality TV during the 2000s. I'll be honest, I'm scared of twins. I think they're too powerful, so all I'll say is that all of the twins, including the Muffalettas, should have been put through to the live shows. I stand with the twins of American Idol, and I don't want to be taken out by their supernatural abilities. Anyway, watching the season, it really highlighted how much I miss the judges being able to actually provide any critique to the contestants. In current day Idol, I just skip through the judging because it isn't honest and it doesn't benefit the contestants' development in any way. It's a waste of time, and I'd rather listen to Randy call people pitchy on a loop for the next millennia. I do find that outside of his biased Teacher's Pet Contestant of the Year, I generally agree with Simon's feedback. But Jesus, he is harsh, and I'm fine with him being slightly dickish, but he takes it way too far sometimes. It was shocking to see. There were these young twins who he fat shames, and he is pretty rampant with the casual homophobia. I wonder what his current judging style is, because the only way I'm watching any of the Got Talent shows is with a gun to my head. Or when I'm spending Christmas with my mom. Oh, she loves to watch a bit of Britain's Got Talent or The Masked Singer. I hate those shows. Alright, let's move on to, in my opinion, the best stage of the competition, Hollywood, baby. I would have been so happy with more than just 4 episodes dedicated to this. But I'll take what I can get, and Hollywood was a massacre. They had to cut down from 190 free contestants to 24. I'll confess, I am not a good person. Nothing fills me with more joy than watching these people, trapped without sleep, trying desperately to get a conference room to rehearse in at the Holiday Inn Resort Business Centre. This place looks like hell, but with worse carpeting, and with Ryan Seacrest hanging from the rafters like a gargoyle. So, our first big cut saw the contestants split into 2 groups and performing solo on separate days with a choice of 12 songs. And this was a shocking cut from 193 to 97. Okay, perhaps I'm overselling it, because most of the people who were cut at this stage I'd never seen before in my life. But I did love that when it wasn't your day to perform, they got to have a little day trip to LA. And so few of the people here are going to advance that I was just happy for them to get to stay in a nice hotel, and I was sobbing with the guy who got to see the ocean for the first time. That was beautiful. Next up is the crown jewel in Hollywood Week, the group stage, where people had to perform as part of a trio, and they were cut further from 97 down to 75. And good luck if you like any music that was released after the Berlin Wall came down, because basically all of the song choices were from the 1960s. I really miss seeing people with strong personalities on the show, who felt comfortable expressing themselves without the clinical beauty pageant sheen of the current idol. This felt like real people who were bickering and getting into fights during this group task. I liked seeing this unsanitized look at humanity, and I'm not pushing the blame for this on current reality TV contestants, because I understand why people are really holding back and staying on their best behaviour. They don't want to be getting death threats from maniacs on Instagram. That's fair. But so many of these groups were really going through it. The standout nightmare trio to me was these 3 young girls, with 2 of them being chaperoned by overbearing stage parents. One of their dads, seemingly with no qualifications but a lot of confidence, put himself in charge of choreographing their dance routine, and I'm sure he meant well, but I just kept feeling like a lot of these teens are too young to be a part of this show. I really think that they should have raised the lower age limit from 16 to 18. This is an extreme amount of pressure, and not everyone can handle it like the precocious superstar Michaela Gordon. Apparently people found her annoying, but I loved her. She had the energy and spirit of a 50-year-old Real Housewife at such a young age. She's only 38 now, but we need to start a Real Housewives of Las Vegas so that she can star. I really felt for one of the other 16-year-olds, Jacqueline Crum. She gets basically 0 rehearsal time with her group because her mom has MS and had to go to the emergency room. And bless the other girls in the group were very sweet to her, but this was just too much. I couldn't handle the stress as an adult. If I was in this scenario, I'd be binge-eating Baby Bells with a wax seal still on them, so kudos to Jacqueline. The next stage of torture is one final a cappella performance before they're divided into 4 rooms, with only 2 of the rooms getting through to what I call the elevator of death. While I was watching, I had to remind myself that the oldest people here are 28, because I kept viewing these people as my elders. In my head, I kept referring to Scott Saville as Sir. 28 really hit different in 2005. Anyway, putting them in these rooms is so cruel, and while they're still waiting for their decision, some of them can hear people in another room celebrating because they've got through, and they just know that their chances are getting even slimmer. Sure, they must look around and know that their odds aren't good when they see that Carrie or one of the other standouts aren't in their room. Oh, speaking of Carrie, they portray this girl like she is a complete dumbass. And when I think about this time, Newlyweds with Jessica Simpson aired from 2003 to 2005, and she was a huge star. So I wonder if they were trying to fit Carrie into a dumb blonde trope. Alright, so 2 of the rooms get through, but all of the celebrating they just did was quite premature because their final hurdle before the live shows with the top 24 is elevator hell. And these sick fucks have put cameras in every corner of this elevator that they ride up to get the final decision from the judges. And I swear, this is the elevator from Severance. And I could really relate to poor Faith Gatewood. As someone who is also horrific with directions, especially under pressure, this woman was so talented, but she gets rejected, has a breakdown in the elevator, and presses the wrong floor to leave and gets lost. They really put these contestants through the ringer. Poor Faith is devastated and can't even escape, and has to deal with that fuckhead Ryan Seacrest chasing her down. Constantine seems like the contestant with the most industry knowledge. He just gets how to play the game, and knows that they are picking people to fit certain tropes. We see him get nervous when Bo Bice gets through because they're both fulfilling the same long-haired rocker type. This show is not a meritocracy. It's shallow and awful, and if you're a person of colour, then it's going to be a whole lot more unfair. And there's only so many places set aside for you. This elevator hell process is just so cruel, and they make the final two guys and girls go up in the elevator together, where one will be rejected and one will make it through. They do this to that 16-year-old Jacqueline Crum, and then she gets sent home. Yeah, these people have zero conscience. At times, I was so devastated and shocked when contestants were sent home. I was genuinely getting so worked up that it wasn't good for my mental state. Then I realised it's been over 20 years since this has happened, so I need to move past it, because I'm sure the contestants have. But I spent way too much time going down wormholes to find some of these people, because I needed to be reassured that they were doing okay. From my background research, they all mainly seem to have normal lives, and it isn't as tragic as when I was Googling people while binging Love After Lockup. The way they treat these contestants couldn't be done in 2026 due to the duty of care, but has enough time passed for me to be able to watch this guilt-free. These people were tortured 20 plus years ago. I just want to know how heavily this should weigh on my conscience. Do we need to have a disclaimer added before classic reality television like they do for those old racist Disney movies? Alright, let's move on to the top 24, and this section kind of drags for me. I just needed them to get to the theme weeks. The song choices were so painfully dated and boring for these weeks. Thank you to Aloha Michaud for performing songs from the 21st century, but she got screwed, as did anyone who was given an invisible edit and wasn't shown before the stage. Although I did enjoy the short intro packages that helped us to learn more about each performer. Who doesn't like to hear stupid tidbits on their star signs or their love of chicken wings? Something I had forgotten was the contentious relationship between Ryan and Simon. At times, it gets super awkward to watch with all of the tension, and the audience seemed genuinely uncomfortable and were silent during a lot of the weird scenes between them. I think there was some heated rivalry situation going on. At one point, Ryan even throws water on Simon. It's crazy. Now, despite the eventual winner, this is a season of the rocker between Bo, Constantine, Jessica Sierra, and Nadia Turner. My first standout performance is Nadia singing The Power of Love, and she remains my favourite from the season. She is just an icon, and I think she had the strongest sense of identity of any of the contestants. I couldn't take my eyes off her. Another performance I loved was Anwar Robinson's What a Wonderful World. He is just so likeable, and it doesn't hurt that he is unbelievably hot. One of the best looking men I've ever seen on Idol. Finally, I also enjoyed Bo Bice's Whipping Post. Bo was very smart to choose generally a more acoustic sound rather than the usual karaoke sounding backing music. And I'll always root for a man who reminds me of the guy Cocapen. I loved his little dolphin teeth. Behind the scenes, I wonder if Carrie was freaked out by Jessica Sierra singing a Martina McBride song during the top 20, because Jessica Sierra is basically Carrie in a push-up bra. Honestly, reading through the list of names of the people who got knocked out at this stage, they were all pretty forgettable to me, although I was shocked by David Brown being eliminated because he was an early standout, but I was happy to find out that he now goes by the stage name Lucky Day, and he is killing it. He is now the most successful male idol contestant at the Grammys. The most memorable eliminations were in that final cut from 16 to 12 finalists. We lost the comeback kid, Nico Smith, and as a glasses wearer, I like seeing a singer with spectacles on, and I don't mean fashionable ones like Billie Eilish wears. These men are showing up looking like accountants. We also lost Travis Tucker, and I was a fan of his dancing because so many of the other contestants barely moved on the stage. And then we lost, oh god, poor Amanda Afila. She already had to contend with being sexually harassed by Simon, who said that he wished that he could be her microphone in a future life. Ugh, I forgot what a creep he was. And I hope that Bikini Girl is doing okay. Finally, we lost Janae Castine, and I was relieved for her. She was just so young and looked absolutely petrified. I think it could have been a much more successful experience for her if she'd waited a couple more years to audition. All right, moving on to the top 12, and the first theme week is songs from the 60s. Yeah, because we haven't heard enough of that so far. We kick things off with a real shocker. Mario Vasquez withdraws from the competition for personal reasons. And I dug in the dark depths of some fan forums from 2005, and a lot of people thought that he was a frontrunner to win. So this was a shocking moment, and his official line was that he wanted more creative control than he'd get with the record deal being offered from the show, and that it would make no difference staying longer in the competition as being a semi-finalist was enough. I don't know if I agree with that mindset. Anyway, in 2007, a PA on the show said that Mario made an inappropriate sexual advance or gesture towards him, and I couldn't find any further details, so I don't want to wade into this any further. But Mario didn't seem to get any major career success, although he did have a song featuring Fat Joe, and we can't all say that. Fair enough. So Nico Smith, my spectacled king, is brought back to replace him, and I was very happy to see him again. And he also manages to escape the bottom three for this week. So this 1960s theme resulted in some pretty weak performances, but I again loved Nadia Turner, and she sang You Don't Have to Say You Love Me by Dusty Springfield. The bottom three this week were Lindsay, Michaela, and Jessica Sierra, with Lindsay Cardinelli going home. Yeah, she was pretty mad to me, but I did like that she had a deeper voice than a lot of the other female performers. And I felt bad when I read how much she hated performing Knock on Wood, and then they made her record it for the Idol Showstoppers album that they released with songs performed by the top 12. I stalked her Instagram, and she is now married to a cowboy, remains very hot, and is still performing to this day. And I'll say this for everyone in the top 12. They may not all have got superstar success, but they're all clearly very passionate about music and are still working at it 20 plus years on. So respect to all of the season 4 alums. For the top 11, we had the most pointless theme, Billboard number ones. Yeah, I need them to narrow in and make these more specific. This is basically pick any song. They started the Billboard chart in 1958. There is just too many options. I get that it gives the artists a lot more freedom, but part of the fun back in the day watching the show with a more limiting theme was predicting who was going to sing what each week. So this week was a complete mess. They fucked up the voting numbers and displayed the wrong ones on screen for Michaela, Jessica, and Anwar. This meant they had to add an additional episode and re-air the performances with the judges giving new live feedback. This week also included the only performance I had seen from the show before, Carrie singing Alone by Heart with a terrifying hairdo. And this performance gave me very high expectations for what I'd see from Carrie this season, and sadly this is her only performance that I was a fan of. Otherwise, I enjoyed Nico doing a Cisco song and Nadia coming out with a mohawk like Storm. Also, I am obsessed with the group performances that they do. They're only given like 2 lines each, so they're all so desperate to shine. So they're all murdering and over-singing He's Not Heavy, He's My Brother this week. I do like how loose and casual this show is. Ryan is just wearing a t-shirt, and the judges, including Paula, are wearing pretty regular clothing. This isn't some scenario like that Adam Sandler premiere, where Selena is dressed up and he's wearing beach shorts and all the rest of the men are dressed like trash. Oh my god, sidebar, but my worst nightmare in life is having to stand next to Seacrest while he says your voting number and you have to make those begging, desperate puppy dog eyes and that call me gesture at the camera. Anyway, the bottom 3 are Anthony Fedorov, Nadia Turner, and I'll just say, what the fuck, America? But ultimately, Michaela Gordon goes home, and I've already said that I want her to be a real housewife, but I think that she was very smart in building her post-Idol career on her big personality. She's got a lot of plates spinning. She hosts a totally weird and funny video show, has a podcast, is a radio host, and has a residency in Vegas with her band. Not too shabby. Alright, so we've made it to the top 10. Music from the 1990s, my personal favourite era of music. When Ryan is in the Coca Cola Red Room with the contestants and teasing this week's theme, one of his joke clues is about the O.J. Simpson trial. Oh, this would not be flying on today's Disney Idol. So getting to the top 10 is a big deal. A lot of them really want to reach this milestone because after every season, there is a tour around the US with the finalists and they get a decent paycheck and exposure from this, but only the top 10 get to be included on the tour. My highlight for this week is Fonzelle Solomon. She is a star and she makes song choices that really highlight her voice. I loved her performance of Whitney Houston's I Have Nothing, and I also respect that Paula makes most of her judging decisions based on her pussy. She is obsessed with Anwar, and honestly, I get it. This is also the week when Constantine gets the memo that maybe his strengths don't lie with rock, and musical theatre is more his forte. My lowlight this week is Carrie. I expected so much more from her this season. She has such a robotic quality to her, like Ree Drummond, the pioneer woman. But Simon is firmly rooted up her ass. And to be fair, she has a fantastic voice, so even when she's boring, the song usually sounds good. Over to the result show, and this bottom three was such bullshit. So those at risk of leaving are Nadia Turner. Now, this is a war crime. She was my winner. And, in 2005, they were also airing the second season of America's Next Top Model. She didn't enter, but she should have won that too. This woman just has it. Also in the bottom three are Anwar Robinson, and we have a shock elimination for Jessica Sierra. And all I'll say is fuck Simon. He was such an asshole and called her unlikable this week. Like, what kind of feedback is that? The public are just getting rid of all of the women this season, 3 girls in a row, and I don't agree with the consensus that I read online at the time that the men were a much stronger group than the women. I don't think that's true. Oh, this bottom three, it made me so mad. I suffered from a brief rage blackout when it was announced. Why is Scott still here? And I know this was a point of contention at the time. If you're not aware, there was a very popular website at the time called Vote for the Worst that encouraged voters to support the worst contestants. And they had some power and were responsible for many contestants outstaying their welcome. I first became aware of them in season 6 with Sanjaya, and I'd take Sanjaya any day over Scott. Something that did help me calm down and brought me some joy was seeing the American Idol Ford advert where they're puppets. Best thing I've seen this season since Leroy. Anyway, this week we lost the very likeable Jessica Sierra, who is one of the few people I was aware of before watching the season, as sadly I know her from her appearance on Celebrity Rehab with Dr. Drew. One of the darkest shows I've ever watched, but she was one of the few success stories. And today she isn't a very public figure, but from what I've seen, she looks fantastic, has a lovely life with her family, and I think she's a real inspiration. Once we get to the top 9, we have a new theme on this show with the first ever musicals week. And Jesus Christ, I hope this is the last, because it was a mess. Not even in a fun way, there were so many dull performances. The highlight was of course Constantine singing My Funny Valentine. This was a star turn for him, and this is what he's supposed to be doing. He was fantastic, but I could really do without all of the sultry eyes he makes at the camera. I also love seeing Fantasia perform on the result show. She just has so much personality and charisma, and it highlighted the lack of that in some of this year's finalists. Fantasia's just a star. I need to persevere through the pre-HD quality and watch season 3, because she's great. Okay, not so good was Scott's performance of The Impossible Dream. Truly one of the worst things I've ever heard. He says that his mom suggested the song to him, and now I know that she hates him like I do. Alright, I need to cool it. So in the bottom 3, we have Foncel, and stuff like this is why I wasn't surprised when Trump was elected. That country doesn't know how to vote. At least Scott was in the bottom, but he still doesn't go home. So we say goodbye to Nico Smith, and I learned that he is the son of Baseball Hall of Famer Ozzie Smith. I'm a basketball girl, so I don't really know much about baseball, so that meant nothing to me, but it sounds like his dad was a really big deal. Anyway, Nico is still releasing music, has his own record label, and is still wearing his cute glasses. Moving on to the top 8 and the famous contestant's birth year, which is basically just a 70s week with a light sprinkle of 80s. So, a term I like to use for myself is childless freak. I've never been interested in becoming a parent, and I don't really love looking at pictures of people's babies, but I do like looking at throwback pictures of people, so I love seeing all of the childhood pictures of the finalists. Baby Constantine was given the same menacing stare he does to this day. Now, this week, I loved Anwar. He is always picking songs that were originally performed by women, and he chooses I'll Never Love This Way Again by Dionne Warwick. And this made me nostalgic. I really miss seeing people perform ballads on stools. Like Paula, I never have anything constructive or mildly critical to say about this man because he's too hot and an absolute star. No notes from me. Oh, we actually saw Simon give Carrie some critique this week, and Randy says that finally Simon is speaking the truth. Get him, Randy. Another high point was Constantine singing Bohemian Rhapsody, although in the Idol verse, I will always compare it to Adam Lambert's cover, so it was lacking for me a bit. Basically, every week we're seeing celebrities in the audience. Hall & Oates are there to watch the top 8 perform, and it's a shame that they had to listen to Scott destroy their song. But I miss when people actually cared about the show. They couldn't even get Jelly Roll and Ashanti back for the most recent season of Idol. Now, with this results show, things are getting serious. Ryan has even dressed up in a suit. And he also makes a Kirstie Alley fat joke. There was no place for women's bodies to be safe and left alone in the 2000s. We learned that the top 12 have recorded a cover of Diana Ross's When You Tell Me That You Love Me as a single, but only the top 8 were allowed on the stage to perform it. I like that they also gave us some insight into what a typical week looks like for the contestants, and I'm not surprised. It seems pretty brutal, and this is why I don't think 16-year-olds should be on the show. I'm already stressed thinking about how Disney and Nickelodeon were working their child stars to the bone at the time. So throughout the show, I would say that the craziest part of each week is the results. They are constantly flipping and flopping. The bottom 3 has Scott and Beau. And, I'm not ready to talk about this, but Idol lost an angel that day. These fuckheads send Nadia Turner home. I did look her up and she remains stunning, and in an act of Idol nepotism, her daughter auditioned on season 20 and went as far as Hollywood. I mean, I'll take that over last season, which had the son of that bigot from Backstreet Boys. That was a mess. Anyway, Nadia is performing with a southern rock blues band called Nadia and the Good Water, and I watched some of the performances on her Instagram and I'm a fan. And it is a disgrace that Nadia was eliminated before top 7 because I would have loved to see what she'd take on for the 70s dance music theme. So if I had a time machine, the first place I'd want to go is straight back to 2005 to find out if women are actually losing their minds over Constantine. Because Ryan keeps telling us that they are, and is this actually true? Because he reminds me of a sleazy uncle, but I can kind of see his appeal to a housewife who is taking too many benzos. This whole week is pretty rough apart from Fonzel in my opinion. I get that style is pretty cyclical and Y2K style has made a comeback, but there has to be some exceptions because poor Carrie is always dressed a mess. Even Simon, her #1 fan, says that she looks like Barbie meets the Stepford Wives. Now, fair enough, this theme isn't Carrie's specialty, but her singing MacArthur Park is one of the most horrible things I've ever witnessed. If I had her money, I would be making sure that this was scrubbed off the internet. Her vocals are always decent, but there must have been a better song choice available to her. So in this week's results show, Ryan gets a lot of attention because he got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't these kind of a vanity thing that you can pay for if you're reasonably well known? Anyway, this made me mad, and if I take the substance and my face blows off onto the Walk of Fame, I want it to land on Ryan's star. He's just not for me, that man. Okay, the bottom 3 is Anthony, Scott, and Anwar, with Anwar going home. This isn't good for my health, but every week there was a new travesty. I don't know how Anthony and Scott are still here. Especially Scott, there was just no getting rid of this man. To the people who ran Vote for the Worst, all I have to say is, dishonor on your family, dishonor on your cow. So looking at my beloved Anwar Robinson in 2026, he somehow looks even younger. He's done a lot of theatre work and just generally seems like a really stand-up guy. So I wasn't surprised to see that he's a pillar of his community and a director of arts, teaching the next generation of performers. Alright, top 6, finally we get to see the contestants singing current songs because the theme is music from the 21st century. We also get to see them go back to their hometowns this week, so Carrie is on the farm and fishing like a good old country gal. And when we see her with straightened hair this week, she looks a lot more like modern day Carrie. I kind of love how Randy is constantly on her neck. I feel like he feels the need to compensate for Simon's blatant ass kissing. I did love seeing Fonzel's home life. She is just so charming and has a black belt in karate, her brothers are hilarious, and she worked as a UPS carrier. It's nice to see people have actual jobs. My highlight for this week is Bo Bice singing the One Tree Hill theme song wearing a dashiki kaftan dress and Bono's sunglasses. What a time. Also, in his hometowns, we got to see his insanely hot mum. She was gorgeous and, this is mean, but quite a stark contrast to Constantine's dad, who looked like what they'd find if they opened John Mayer's casket. I'm sorry, sir, that was mean, but Constantine did perform my karaoke song of choice, How You Remind Me by Nickelback. Say what you want about Nickelback, I love them, and this is a song for the ages. It's the Canadian national anthem. Over to the results show, and the audience this week is full of blonde icons. Both Heather Locklear and Pamela Anderson are there, and that felt right. So the bottom three is Fonzel and Anthony, with the shock elimination of Constantine. But look at him up today, he's had an incredibly successful career on Broadway and was nominated for a Tony. He was also in negotiations with ABC to star in a television sitcom loosely based on his upbringing. Unfortunately, that went nowhere, but in my biased opinion, his greatest achievement is sleeping with multiple Real Housewives of New York. Tinsley Mortimer, Ramona Singer, and the Countess Luann de Lesseps. The stories that this man must be able to tell. I would buy his autobiography. Once we get to the top 5, everyone will now have to perform 2 songs, the first being by the songwriting duo Lieber and Stoller, and the second being from the current Billboard chart. I'm sounding like a real broken record with my highlights for each week, but once again it was Fonzel, and she sings When You Tell Me That You Love Me. This was fantastic, and all I can say is, fuck Simon. I hate that he tries to position himself as some kind of truth teller, and I don't like that the public trusts him. This man is biased as fuck. He's picked Carrie as the winner, so he's pushing Fonzel out of the way, as she's a threat to that. In hindsight, I did find the last few weeks of this season to be kind of a drag to watch. It becomes a snooze when we haven't got many finalists left, especially when 2 of those people are pretty dull and dead weight. At least we finally say goodbye to Scott. Now, during the season, the public learned about his previous arrest for domestic violence, and I really don't want to say much about Scott. From his Instagram, I can see that he's still performing and recently enjoyed a nice bowl of gumbo. Alright, moving on. So for top 4, the themes this week are country and gamble and huff. Finally, the moment Carrie has been waiting for, and I still didn't like her performance, sadly. Although I did enjoy Beau's grandma being prepared to kick Simon's ass. I'm surprised at how this man has avoided getting seriously beaten up. He must have top-notch security. We do see Beau get a standing ovation for singing the theme song to Donald Trump's The Apprentice. Something I don't understand is why they let Carrie and Anthony sing the exact same song, If You Don't Know Me By Now, for the Gamble and Huff song. I feel like they just did this because they wanted to definitely secure Anthony getting voted off this week. And it was about time for him. I would have gotten violent if Fonzel didn't make it to the top 3. So, goodbye, sweet Anthony, who looks like the little boy from Stuart Little and Jerry Maguire, if you remember him. And I really do feel for this guy. It sounds like he's been through a lot and lost his brother to Ewing sarcoma shortly after the season. There was some romantic speculation about him and Carrie because she had a breakdown and said I love you when he got voted out. I think they were just close friends, but he has been working consistently over the years. He's dabbled in musical theatre, was lead for the rock band Seven Heaven, not to be confused with the Jesus-y show with Jessica Biel, and I think he looks hotter now, and his partner does one of the voices for Steven Universe, so get it, Anthony. I'm going to skim pretty quickly for the top 3, because I get too emotionally invested, and I'm still pretty sad over losing Fonzel. But each contestant performed 3 songs, one chosen by Clive Davis, one chosen by one of the judges, and one chosen by themselves. Something I appreciated for this week is that the audience and the final 3 got to go see a special screening of Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. It was nice having to watch everyone pretend to be excited. We even get to hear Carrie doing a terrible Yoda impression. Okay, let's just get straight to mourning my queen, Fonzel Solomon. And to no one's surprise, she looks stunning today. When I was reading up on her on the reputable source Wikipedia, I learned that before Idol, she competed on P. Diddy's Making the Band, but didn't make it, and Diddy said that he didn't remember her. So, in hindsight, that really turned out to be a blessing for Fonzel. Okay, I need to know what was going on in 2005, because she was the highest finishing American Idol contestant ever not to receive a recording contract afterward. How could no one offer her a record deal after the show? Or were they all just really lowballing her so she turned them down? Anyway, she appeared on a song featured on RuPaul's Drag Race, and I can think of no higher honor. And she's been steadily working, performing, acting, and last year she did a little Idol reunion on the show with Carrie, Anthony, Michaela, Lindsay, and Constantine. Okay, the wildest thing I read is that she got detained by airport security for having a gun in her luggage. How has this happened to 2 different American Idol alumni? Because I remember hearing about this happening to Scotty McCreery. Yeah, I'm not American, but this is just so insane to me. Why are people accidentally forgetting they have a gun at the airport? On to the finale, and I'm sure that everyone knows the outcome of this. So each finalist performed 3 songs, including the winner's single, Inside Your Heaven. I hate this song. If I had to pick one, I'd say that I found Beau's rendition a little bit more tolerable. Also, it is crazy that on his recorded version, they got Richie Sambora from Bon Jovi to play guitar and provide backing vocals. But Carrie was the winner, and in hindsight, that was the right decision. I think the glory days of Idol would have petered out a lot quicker without the success of Carrie's post-show career. I had a look at what happened to Beau after the show and learned that he was part of the controversy this season due to his previous arrest for possession of cocaine. He unfortunately obviously didn't become a global superstar, but he has consistently released albums and was a lead singer for the band Blood, Sweat and Tears. I needed to see what he looked like today and saw that he recently competed on the Rob Lowe game show The Floor. And I love that in 2026 he looks like Bill Hader's ghost of Christmas Future. He's a cute older man. It's good to see him doing well because it sounds like he's had a tough time of things health-wise and was hospitalized 20 times during the Idol tour. My favourite fun fact about Beau is that he recorded a song for the Will Ferrell movie Blades of Glory, and I'm obsessed with that film. I went to the cinema opening day to see that in 2007. Okay, over to Carrie Underwood, and I've already talked about modern day Carrie, but if we just look at her commercial success, she has sold over 16.3 million albums and has the biggest album sales record for any American Idol contestant in the US. Of course, my queen Kelly Clarkson has her beat when we look at international numbers. Phew, this was a lot, and I think it's definitely going to be the longest episode I've ever recorded. But I'm definitely not completely against watching future American Idol seasons. I just might need some time to recover or to wait for my next illness. So that wraps up this episode, but I will be back next week to break down America's Next Top Model Season 1. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you liked what you heard here, please subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube, and consider leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps new people find it. You can also find me on Instagram at PopMonsterPod, and please DM me if you have any ideas for things you'd like me to cover in future episodes. Again, thank you guys so much, and have a wonderful rest of your day.